What if everything you were ever taught about early humans was missing the most important chapter? Not the tools they carved, not the caves they painted, not the fire they kindled on cold stone floors, but the days and the long, dark, howling nights when there was no fire at all, temperatures outside at minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, wind driving across open tundra like a blade, no shelter but the landscape itself, no flame, no ember, nothing glowing in the dark. And yet, they survived. Not just survived, they traveled, they hunted, they crossed frozen rivers and climbed ice-crusted ridges in the black of winter. How? That question has haunted archaeologists for decades, because the answer isn't found at any single dig site. It isn't painted on any cave wall. It's buried in the biology of the human body, in fibers pulled from permafrost graves, in the fat layers of animals that vanished 12,000 years ago. And the answer, when it finally comes into focus, tells us something extraordinary, not just about who they were, but about what we still carry inside us from those brutal, beautiful, unforgiving years. Stay with me, because this story begins long before the first spark was ever struck, and it doesn't end where most people think. The last glacial maximum, roughly 20,000 years ago, was a planet almost unrecognizable to modern eyes. Sea levels were nearly 400 feet lower. Britain was connected to Europe. Alaska was connected to Siberia by a land bridge as wide as a continent. Average temperatures across Europe and North America ran 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit colder than today, not just in winter, year-round. The landscape most Ice Age humans inhabited was called the Mammoth Steppe, a vast, frigid grassland stretching from Western Europe across Siberia into North America. Treeless in many regions, open, brutally windswept, and yet teeming with life. Woolly mammoths, cave lions, giant elk with antlers spanning 12 feet, horses, bison, all of them cold adapted in ways that took scientists generations to understand. The humans who lived among them were not huddled helplessly in caves waiting for spring. They were mobile, strategic, among the most adaptable organisms this planet has ever produced. And they had a toolkit for surviving the cold that went far beyond fire, a toolkit we are only now beginning to fully appreciate. Let's start with the most fundamental tool of all, the human body. Ice Age bodies were not simply modern bodies trapped in an inconvenient climate. They were bodies shaped over tens of thousands of years, specifically for the cold. Consider non-shivering thermogenesis. Most people know humans shiver to generate heat. But there is a second system, one that operates silently, deep inside the tissues, without any muscle contraction at all. It's called brown adipose tissue, brown fat. Unlike white fat, which stores energy, brown fat burns energy directly to generate heat. It is packed with mitochondria and activated by cold exposure. Modern humans still have it, but in small amounts. Studies of cold-adapted peoples like the Inuit, the Sami, and the Ainu show measurable differences in how their bodies generate and conserve heat. Their metabolisms run hotter in cold conditions. Their peripheral blood vessels constrict more efficiently. Their extremities tolerate lower temperatures before damage begins. Ice Age humans who spent their entire lives in these conditions almost certainly had significantly more brown fat and far more refined cold response physiology than modern sedentary populations. The body was not just a passenger in the cold. It was the first and most important piece of survival technology ever developed. But there is something even more remarkable waiting just ahead. And it comes from a set of tiny, seemingly mundane artifacts scattered across Ice Age sites, from France to Siberia. In a cave in Siberia called Denisova Cave, someone made a needle 50,000 years ago. Not a simple bone awl for punching holes in hide. A needle with an eye, a tiny, precisely drilled hole through which thread could be passed. 3 centimeters long, carved from the wing bone of a large bird. Completely functional, you could thread it and use it today. The implications are staggering. A needle with an eye means thread, Thread means the ability to join pieces of material together in a controlled, seam-following, curve-hugging way. It means tailored clothing garments cut and shaped to fit the precise contours of a living human body. This matters because fitted clothing is not a luxury. In extreme cold, it is a survival imperative. Loose clothing creates channels through which warm air escapes and cold air infiltrates. When you move, when you work, loose clothing pumps heat out of the body like bellows. Fitted, layered clothing with seams that seal, with overlapping pieces that block wind, is dramatically more effective. The clearest window into what this looked like in practice comes from Otzi the Iceman, the Copper Age traveler found preserved in alpine glacial ice in 1991. His outfit consisted of at least 5 different animal species, each hide selected for specific properties: deer leather for his coat, bear fur for his shoes and hat, grass woven into insulating layers inside his footwear. This was not random scavenging. This was engineered layering, the same principle used in modern technical outdoor clothing. And Otzi lived 5,000 years ago, long after the Ice Age ended. The people who preceded him, who faced far colder conditions, almost certainly possessed clothing technology at a comparable or greater level of sophistication. They weren't just wearing fur, they were wearing systems. Clothing alone cannot explain everything. In the most extreme cold events, multi-day blizzards with temperatures dropping to -50 or 60 and wind chills lethal within minutes, even the best garments have limits. At some point, you need shelter. And here, Ice Age humans displayed a sophistication that continues to astonish researchers. They read the landscape, not metaphorically, literally. A river valley running east to west, sheltered by ridges to the north, blocks the prevailing Arctic winds. The south-facing slope of that valley receives more sunlight. A grove of dwarf birch along the riverbank further breaks the wind. When archaeologists map the distribution of Paleolithic campsites across Europe, a pattern emerges immediately. They cluster in sheltered topographic positions: river bends, the lee side of hills, the mouths of narrow valleys. This was systematic, multi-generational knowledge about how cold air moves, encoded not in any single person's memory, but in the accumulated wisdom of entire lineages. And then there are the structures. At Mezherik in Ukraine, excavated in the 1960s, archaeologists uncovered 4 large circular dwellings built almost entirely from mammoth bones. Walls constructed from interlocking skulls, jawbones, and long bones. Frames clearly covered with hides. Floors excavated slightly into the earth for added insulation. Each structure used the bones of dozens of individual mammoths. The builders chose their materials not just for size, but for specific structural properties. Certain bones in certain positions, load distribution patterns that parallel modern engineering principles. People who could build this were not struggling to survive. They were thriving, imposing their intelligence on one of the harshest environments the planet could offer. Now we come to the aspect of Ice Age cold survival that receives the least attention and may be the most fundamental of all: what they ate. Cold survival is, at its core, a thermodynamic problem. The body loses heat to the environment. It must generate heat to replace what it loses, and heat generation requires fuel. In the Ice Age world, the primary fuel was fat. Fat contains more than twice the caloric density of protein or carbohydrate. Gram for gram, it produces more metabolic heat. And unlike large amounts of protein, fat is a clean-burning fuel the body uses with extraordinary efficiency in cold conditions. The traditional Inuit diet during the coldest months was composed of up to 75% fat by caloric content. Seal blubber, whale skin, caribou bone marrow. These were not incidental food choices. They were, in the most literal sense, fuel for the internal furnace. Ice Age hunters showed a striking pattern in their butchery that mirrors this understanding precisely. At many Paleolithic kill sites, the long bones of large animals, the femur, the humerus, are systematically cracked open, not primarily to extract meat, but to access the marrow inside. Bone marrow is extraordinarily rich in fat. A single woolly mammoth femur could yield more than a liter of marrow. Rendered into grease, it could be stored, transported, and consumed over days or weeks, providing a concentrated heat source that kept the body's furnace running, even when external fire was unavailable. There is evidence from sites in France and Belgium of deliberate marrow storage bones processed long after the main butchery of the carcass was complete. This was metabolic planning. They were banking heat against the cold to come. On the days when fire was impossible, when storms made kindling unignitable, when the group was moving too fast to stop those fat reserves, metabolized steadily by the body's internal machinery, kept them warm from the inside. There is one more dimension to this story that no list of artifacts can fully capture: the social dimension. Two bodies pressed together generate more heat than one alone. A group of 20 people sleeping in a confined space creates a microclimate measurably warmer than the ambient temperature outside. Modern cold weather survival training teaches this explicitly. In extreme cold, the worst thing you can do is separate from your group. Body heat is a shared resource. Isolation is a death sentence. Ice Age humans knew this not as abstract principle, but as lived reality encoded in their social structures. Ancient DNA analysis of Ice Age populations has revealed that these were not isolated family bands living in permanent separation. They maintained contact. They exchanged members through deliberate marriage alliances. They met seasonally at regular gathering points. At large seasonal sites, where the remains of hundreds of animals have been found alongside objects that traveled long distances from other regions, dispersed winter groups came together. They shared information. They shared technology. They repaired the social bonds that would sustain them through the next isolation. And in the immediate, physical sense, they shared warmth. Groups sleeping in close, communal clusters, each body contributing heat to the shared microclimate. Each person simultaneously a source and a beneficiary. In the cold, other people were not just companions, they were part of the heating system. Everything we have discussed, the clothing, the landscape reading, the fat strategy, the social organization, all of it points to something beyond survival technology. It points to planning, to abstraction, to the ability to hold the future in mind while acting in the present. Consider what surviving a fireless period in Ice Age conditions actually requires. You must know, before the cold event arrives, that it is coming. You must have prepared clothing adequate for conditions worse than the present. You must have accumulated fat stores to fuel the metabolic furnace for multiple days. You must have identified shelter locations in advance. You must have maintained social bonds that allow you to share resources with others. None of this can be improvised in the moment. All of it requires anticipatory cognition, the ability to simulate a future state and prepare for it before it arrives. Language, planning, social coordination across time. These are the capacities that distinguish modern humans from every other species. And the Ice Age record suggests they were operating at a level of sophistication we are only beginning to fully appreciate. A species that could not think abstractly about the future would not have survived the last glacial maximum. Full stop. The ice was a filter, and the humans who passed through it were the ones capable of thinking ahead. We began with a question: how did they survive the cold without fire? And the answer, now that we have walked through it together, is that they didn't simply survive it. They lived it. There is a difference, and it matters. Survival implies barely making it through, clinging to the edge, enduring what cannot be changed. What the archaeological record shows is something else entirely. People who understood their environment at a depth of granular, multi-generational knowledge that most modern people never encounter in any domain, who had built, over thousands of years of painful experiment and accumulated wisdom, a system biological, technological, social, cognitive, that was not just adequate for the cold, but genuinely adapted to it. They weren't surviving in spite of the Ice Age. In some profound sense, the Ice Age was making them. Every brutal winter that killed the unprepared left behind the ones who had prepared better. Every failed technology was replaced by one that worked. Every social arrangement that left people too cold and too isolated gave way to arrangements that kept people warm and connected. 40,000 years of that process produced the fully modern human mind. Produced you. The next time you feel cold, settle into your bones on a winter morning, the kind of cold that makes you want to stay inside, that makes the world feel hostile and sharp and indifferent. Take a moment. That feeling is ancient. Your body knows exactly what it is. Your instincts know what to do. Because somewhere deep in your inheritance, in the part of you shaped not by culture or education or technology, but by the long, slow, merciless pressure of ice and wind and dark, you already know how to survive this. You always have. If something in this story stayed with you, a question still open, a thread you want to pull, the next video is already waiting. We'll be here, in the shadows, just before the record begins.